In the far reaches of the western Arctic, the daylight falls softly across a frozen horizon. The sun hangs low, its light stretched into pale ribbons across the ice. The air moves in slow currents, barely disturbing the snow that gathers in long, unbroken lines. Sound travels differently here, carried far, muted, as if the cold itself holds it gently. The sea sits beneath a thin layer of mist. Patches of open water shift quietly. Ice flows drift without urgency, guided by currents older than memory. In the distance, shapes appear and fade in the haze, never fully defined. This is a landscape of stillness, a place where time seems to expand, a place where stories move slowly, as though reluctant to disturb the quiet. It is here, among these vast and unhurried waters, that one ship would come to linger for decades, sometimes seen, sometimes lost, always drifting in silence. The Baychimo began without mystery. It was a working vessel built in Sweden in 1914 and operated by the Hudson's Bay Company in the remote northern regions of Canada. Its purpose was simple: to transport cargo, trade goods, and supplies to scattered communities along the Arctic coast. Crews knew the vessel as dependable, not exceptional, not unusual, just one ship among many that moved through the isolated channels between land and sea. For years, the Baychimo followed these routes. It waited at small harbors. It crossed long, open distances through drifting ice and early winter storms. Its timber decks carried the marks of repeated voyages: salt, frost, and the quiet touch of northern wind. There was nothing in these early movements that suggested the ship would later be remembered for anything beyond its work. Yet, as the seasons changed, circumstances would shift in a way few could predict. In the autumn of 1931, the Baychimo became trapped in early ice near the Alaskan coast, close to the town of Barrow, now known as Utqiagvik. The freeze came sooner than expected, locking the vessel in place before it could complete its return journey. The crew waited, hoping for a thaw, watching the ice settle more firmly around the hull. Daylight grew shorter. Winds sharpened. The cold deepened. By October, it was clear the ship might not be freed before winter. The Hudson's Bay Company instructed most of the crew to leave the vessel and return to the settlement, where shelter and supplies were available. A smaller group stayed behind, set up in a temporary cabin on shore, keeping watch over the ship until conditions might change. But the ice did not soften. Snow accumulated against the hull. The ship became more a part of the landscape than a vessel ready to sail. Then, in late November, during a sudden storm, the Baychimo disappeared from sight. When the weather cleared, the crew searched the area and eventually found the vessel several kilometers away, free of the ice, tilted slightly but still afloat. The movement seemed unexpected, yet not impossible. Arctic storms have long been known to shift ice fields and trapped ships over surprising distances. Assessing the damage, the crew concluded that the ship was no longer seaworthy for the remainder of the season. The Hudson's Bay Company made the decision to abandon it. The crew removed valuable cargo, secured what they could, and left the Baychimo to the winter sea. What followed was not dramatic, yet it created the shape of the story that would linger for decades. In the months after the abandonment, the Baychimo was seen again, still afloat, still drifting, moving slowly along currents and shifting ice flows. The reports were simple, not filled with urgency. Travelers, hunters, and explorers came across the ship in various conditions, sometimes grounded in ice, sometimes free, sometimes seen from a distance through light snow. In 1933, a group found the vessel and sheltered inside it during a blizzard. They described it as cold, weathered, but intact. In 1939, another sighting placed it farther west than before, still floating, still resisting submersion. Over the years, the ship appeared intermittently. Each sighting added a quiet and unhurried note to a growing narrative. The last confirmed sighting came in 1969, almost 4 decades after it was abandoned. A group sailing in the Arctic reported the ship drifting near the Beaufort Sea. It looked weathered and empty, but still afloat. No dramatic artifacts remain from the Baychimo's long years of drifting. Only reports, photographs, and the ship's recorded history. Images show weathered wood, leaning railings, and ice forming along the deck. They show a ship adrift in the muted palette of the northern sea, grays, whites, and the faint blue of distant ice. The ship was never recovered. No wreckage has been conclusively identified. Search efforts, both official and informal, have yielded no final answers. The evidence that remains is simple: a log of sightings, a few photographs, and the memory of a ship moving quietly through the Arctic long after anyone expected it to survive. Some believe the Baychimo eventually broke apart and settled beneath the ice in deep water where detection is difficult. Others suggest that the ship may have drifted farther north into regions where currents and ice could have carried it out of common travel routes, leaving it to decay slowly in an unseen corner of the Arctic. It is possible that the Baychimo grounded on a remote shoal. The hull weakened over time until the sea finally claimed it. There is also the idea, held gently by a few, that the ship may still exist in some quiet and unvisited area, its structure preserved by the cold, its presence hidden by the shifting ice. None of these interpretations can be spoken with certainty. The Arctic holds its own silence, keeping answers at a distance. Today, the Arctic remains much as it was when the Baychimo first drifted away. A vast expanse of ice and sea, slow winds brushing over open water, light moving across snow in long, soft bands. In winter, the air becomes almost still, as though listening. Ice forms in quiet layers. The sea shifts beneath it with steady and patient motion. The horizon stretches outward, unbroken and pale, leaving room for memory and unanswered questions. The story of the Baychimo exists here still, not as a legend of fear or urgency, but as a gentle reminder of how the Arctic can hold what is left behind. The Baychimo's journey is carried now in fragments, in sightings told softly, in photographs weathered by time, in reports written without haste. The ship moved through decades of wind and silence, drifting in a place where human presence is rare and the landscape remembers little. There is no sound of engines now, no crew, only the long, slow rhythm of sea and ice. The Arctic continues its quiet breath, unconcerned by the ship that once traveled across its surface. Whatever remains of the Baychimo rests somewhere in that expanse, in the cold, in the water, in the silence that does not lift.